The richest man in the city thought no one dared talk back to him. He could walk into any restaurant, humiliate the staff, and leave with a smirk. But on her very first night, a new waitress stood in front of him, wine dripping down her shirt, and said the one thing no one else had ever dared to say, and it changed everything. At Leonria, the most prestigious restaurant in the city, silence wasn't just expected, it was enforced by reputation. Forks were polished until they shone like mirrors, wine glasses caught the glow of chandeliers, and every movement was deliberate, precise, almost ceremonial. But the moment Sterling Ward walked in, that refined silence turned into something colder, fear. Dressed in a crimson suit and patterned silk tie, the 52-year-old millionaire carried his arrogance like a weapon. His name was etched on skyscrapers, his phone calls could kill contracts, and his visits left the staff walking on glass. He never booked a table, never said please, and never left without crushing someone's spirit. Tonight, however, something was different. It was Zariah's first night, 30 years old, proud, with deep brown skin and a posture that said she would not bend easily. The other waiters wasted no time warning her. "That's Mr. Ward," one whispered. "Don't argue, don't talk back, just survive." Zariah smirked faintly. She'd been waiting tables since she was 19. Difficult customers didn't scare her. But as she approached his table and heard him order his filet mignon with a threat, "If it's overcooked like last time, I'll make someone cry again," she realized this wasn't about customer service. This was about surviving a man who thrived on humiliation. Sterling didn't look up from his phone until she confirmed his order. "New?" he asked, sizing her up. When she nodded, his lips curled. "You people don't last long." She held her tongue, delivering his wine minutes later, only for him to spit it back into the glass and slam it onto the table. "Are you stupid or blind? I asked for Malbec, not Syrah. Do you even know the difference?" The room went quiet. Every eye was on her. She calmly reminded him that he had pointed to the Syrah, but he cut her off with a snarl. "Don't argue. I've had dogs that listen better." A ripple of discomfort spread through the diners. Zariah felt heat rise to her cheeks, not from shame, but from the urge to stand her ground. She turned to leave, but Sterling, with calculated malice, hurled the glass toward the table's edge. It shattered, spraying deep red wine across her crisp white shirt. Gasps filled the air. Somewhere a baby began to cry. Sterling leaned back, his voice dripping with mockery. "I'll be expecting a refund and a manager. You're done." Zariah froze. Then slowly she stepped forward, hand on her hip, and locked eyes with him. "You're right," she said clearly, her voice cutting through the tension. "I am done." The smirk faded from Sterling's face as she continued. "I've cleaned up after men like you my whole life, men who think money is a license to spit on dignity. You humiliate people to feel powerful, but all it shows is that you've never earned respect, only bought fear. I'm not afraid of you. I've been homeless. I've worked 3 jobs at once. I've seen my mother scrub hospital floors until midnight and still come home smiling. And I'll be damned if I let some man in a suit throwing tantrums over wine make me feel small." The dining room was silent, all conversation extinguished. Some diners stared in awe, others in shame, and more than a few began recording on their phones. Sterling, desperate to reassert control, raised his voice. "Manager!" Jonas appeared from the kitchen, caught between a furious millionaire and a drenched waitress who stood like she owned the room. Sterling pointed at her. "Fire her. Now." Jonas hesitated, muttered something about getting the owner, and disappeared. Sterling smirked again. "You'll be gone before dessert." But the owner had already seen everything. From a quiet corner, a tall, silver-haired man in a gray blazer rose and approached. The room seemed to shift around his presence. Roland Hale, founder of Millionaire, was a man whose calm carried authority. "That's enough," he said. Sterling's confidence faltered, but he forced a chuckle. "Finally, someone reasonable. You saw how she disrespected me." Roland's voice was steady. "No, I saw you humiliate her, deliberately, publicly. As you've done to nearly every server here for years." A ripple of murmurs swept the room. Sterling blinked, momentarily stunned. "I've tolerated your behavior because of your money, your influence, your name, but not anymore." Turning to Zariah, Roland said, "You spoke with the kind of truth this place has needed for years." Sterling's jaw tightened. "You're siding with her, a waitress who insulted a loyal customer." Roland's eyes didn't waver. "I'm siding with dignity." He faced the entire room. "I built this restaurant from nothing but my grandmother's recipes and a borrowed checkbook. I never intended for it to be a playground for bullies." Then he turned to Jonas. "Give Zariah the floor manager position, effective immediately." Gasps erupted. Sterling stepped forward. "You're banning me." "Yes," Roland said simply. "You can't do that." "I can, and I just did." The millionaire stood there, mouth opening and closing, no staff rushing to his defense. From one table, then another, applause began, soft but steady, until half the room was clapping. Sterling left without another word. An hour later, Zariah sat in the back office in a fresh shirt, her apron folded neatly on the desk. Roland handed her a folder labeled Management. "I know you didn't come here for a fight," he said. She shook her head. "But I wasn't about to let someone throw wine at me and walk away smiling." He smiled faintly. "That's why you're staying. You gave everyone here permission to breathe. You didn't just stand up for yourself. You stood up for every person who's ever swallowed their pride because they thought they had to." Zariah exhaled slowly. "Thank you," she whispered. By the next day, the story was everywhere. A diner's video of Zariah, wine-soaked but unshaken, calling out Sterling Ward's cruelty had gone viral, racking up millions of views. Comments flooded in, "She's a hero." "Why do the rich think they own decency?" "Respect to Roland Hale." News outlets called. Talk shows sent invites. Sterling's silence was deafening. Within a week, 2 major business partners cut ties with his real estate firm, citing patterns of abusive conduct and reputation risk. His name, once a mark of influence, became a cautionary tale. Zariah's name became something else entirely, a spark. At Millionaire, the air felt lighter. Staff stood taller. Laughter returned to the kitchen. And by the front desk, a new gold plaque greeted every guest. Respect is the dress code. Manager Zariah Coleman. She didn't become rich. She didn't want fame. But she earned something far greater, freedom. Freedom from silence. Freedom from shame. Freedom to stand up, not just for herself, but for anyone who had ever been afraid to speak. And the city learned something too. Courage isn't always about shouting the loudest. Sometimes it's about refusing to bow. That night wasn't just about a spilled glass of wine. It was about drawing a line no one had drawn before. Zariah didn't just win her own dignity back, she gave an entire room permission to breathe. And sometimes the bravest thing you can do is simply refuse to bow.